This is Mr. Spetsnaz, and I wanted to let you guys know the difference between Windows 7 and Windows 8. Now, since Windows 8 is new, there's a couple of things that is wrong with it. There's a couple of bugs, couple of minor problems that interferes with the average person that's on a computer dealing with games, web browsing, whatever you do. Um, which one is better? Well, Windows 7, alright, I had both Windows 7 and Windows 8, and I'm currently using Windows 8. Windows 7, for the average user that wants it to be more basic, easier to learn, and pretty much more for older people that are getting new or starting out with the whole computer idea, searching the web, buying things offline, maybe even playing games like web browser games. If you're older, you're probably not into the more intense games as the younger generation is. But which one is better for the older people? For older people, it would definitely have to be Windows 7. Windows 7 is more basic and easier to understand and learn faster. On Windows 8, it's more about apps. Uh, it's a bit different, it's harder to learn. If you're starting out, you might know more about the operating system that you're using because you're new to it, and everyone that's new to something usually gets used to it after a certain amount of time. It's not like, oh, well, I had this operating system and I don't see where this stuff is at. So you're pretty much lost. But when it comes to the older generation, it's definitely going to have to be Windows 7 because it's more easier to learn. Now, if you're a younger person, as in the younger generation, which one is best for gaming? Well, there's a little bit of difference on each end. Like I said, Windows 8 has minor bugs, and I ran into these bugs already maybe 2 times since I owned my new computer and having Windows 8. When it comes to memory, as in RAM, graphics card, your processor, that all comes down to your OS and how much your OS uses. Now, I've been looking into a bunch of things on which one's better, and when it comes to RAM, it definitely would have to be Windows 8. Now, there is only a slight difference between RAM usage between Windows 8 and Windows 7. Windows 7 uses a little bit more, if I'm not mistaken, applications behind your services than Windows 8 does. Windows 7 uses just a tad bit more of your RAM, and Windows 8 uses a tad bit less of your RAM. So if you're a RAM person that's like, well, I need the lowest amount of RAM usage dealing with my OS, then definitely it would have to be Windows 8. Now, you really won't see a difference between Windows 8 and Windows 7 when it comes to RAM. Now, when it comes to video memory from your graphics card, I'm not sure if there is a difference between video, but if I'm assuming if you're using less RAM with Windows 8, you might be using less video memory. Well, that's not always true. You can always have a difference between Windows 8 and Windows 7 depending on how you set it up. There's a lot of things you can do to change the settings on how Windows looks when it comes to quality and appearance. You can always change that to best performance or best quality if you have a very high-end graphics card. It really doesn't make a difference. It depends on how you use your Windows operating system. Now, if you are looking for something that is dealing with your CPU, as in your processor, if you are using Windows 8, I see a little bit of an increase of usage because, well, you got apps running in the background from Windows 8's App Store and whatever they have, and you're also using a desktop version as well, which I'm using right now. Now, if you're using Windows 7, you only have to worry about is a desktop because there is no app system for Windows 7 until Windows 8 came out. So the difference between Windows 8 and Windows 7 is really not much of a difference. There's slightly minor changes to how the computer uses your RAM, video, and your processor. So when it comes to gaming, you really won't see a difference, but if you do want the lowest amount of RAM usage and you don't, like, I honestly don't know if video memory is different at all. I don't think it is. And if you're wanting the less amount of CPU usage from an OS, you're probably going to have to decide on your own. This is all about uh, a person's opinion on which one they think is easier and which one they think is better when it comes to whatever they're doing. So if you are just browsing the web and just doing just simple things, go with Windows 7 because it's more basic and it's easier to learn. Now, if you want to be up to date and also have different applications that you can use, as in video editing, playing video games, high intense things that put a lot of stress on your computer, and you're only doing it to make videos or whatever, like pretty much video editing, that type of stuff, definitely go with Windows 8. Windows 8 gives you a high variety of everything that deals with video editing and just doing things that are very intensive on your computer. Now, before you get either of these, depending on what you are, you need to debate on what type of computer you're going to need. Now, if you're a gamer and you want to do video editing, you're definitely going to need a high-end computer. As in, you're going to need possibly a dual core to a quad, maybe even a 6-core processor with at least 8 gigs of RAM. That is the max. That honestly, like, I don't see a difference between 8 and 16, from 16 to 32 gigs of RAM. 8 gigs seem to be enough for me when it comes to gaming and doing some video editing. But if you are playing high-end games, you're definitely going to need a good amount of RAM, and you're also going to need a really good processor. And not only that, you're really going to need a really good graphics card. If you don't have any of that, you're not going to get the best performance out of a game. You're not going to get the most experience out of a game, and it's just going to go downhill for you. And you're like, why did I get this? I can't do what I wanted to do. So you have to do a lot of research when it comes to building a computer or buying a computer. Now, if you are just surfing the web, playing browser-based games, stuff like that, the maximum of RAM that you're going to need is only possibly 4 gigabytes of RAM, which is standard for nowadays because most computers get 4 to 6 and stepping away from just 2 gigabytes. So if you're just browsing the web, you're only going to need a dual core processor at the most. And when it comes to a graphics card, it depends. If you're a desktop user or a laptop, laptops tend to overheat and lower down performance on a lot of things. Desktops are high-end, they have air control, all that stuff, so it all depends on what you're doing. So if you're surfing the web, 4 gigs at the most, dual core processor, and a pretty good or decent graphics card. When it comes to gaming, you're gonna need a quad at the is the perfect spot, or if you're playing very high intensive games or video editing, you might want to upgrade ahead. So you also will need 8 gigs of RAM, which is standard and for a gaming computer, and that's pretty much what I use. So I have a quad core processor. I have uh, 8 gigs of RAM and a NVIDIA GeForce graphics card. So it all depends on what you do, and that's pretty much all that really matters. When it comes to Windows 8 and Windows 7, it doesn't matter. It depends on what you do. If you want things to be basic, Windows 7. If you want things to be for editing and high intensive things, you definitely want to go with Windows 8. Like I said, it all depends on what you do. I sound like a broken record, but that is the whole deal between Windows 7 and Windows 8. They have differences of what you can do and how basic things are and how more complex things are. So if you're into those type of things that are very complex and very challenging or very intensive, go with Windows 8. And if you are just an average Joe that just wants to go on the web, do whatever you want, little basic things, go with Windows 7. That's pretty much all I can tell you right now. So that's pretty much the basics of between Windows 8 and Windows 7 and how to debate on what type of computer you're going to need. So that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching, guys. Remember to sub, rate, comment, all that good stuff, and I'll see you guys next time.